Well, you've heard of Prince William, the Prince of Cambridge. Well, now, in Trinidad and Tobago, for the very first time, we are about to welcome our very own, our very first Duke of Tobago, Watson Duke. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Viewpoint, the Brian Heeraman podcast. This is episode number 29. Thanks for tuning in, old listeners, new listeners. I really appreciate you guys to continue to tune in. And before we get started, let me just take this opportunity to inform and to remind everyone that this podcast is available on iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Twitter, and especially for our international friends, you can check out this podcast on Spotify as well. So, we have a lot of topics to get into, but before we get started and before we dive into anything, I want to take this opportunity to wish for the safe release of Andrea Barrett, that girl, that young lady who was kidnapped in Arima. It is such a traumatic experience for the parents to be going through this ordeal. One can only imagine what's taking place in your mind. One can only imagine where that young girl is. I mean, no one should have to go through such a horrendous ordeal. And I hope and I pray for that girl's safe return. I hope for justice I, for those people who took that girl. I hope they are brought to justice and be made an example. I mean, kidnapping is probably one of the most heinous and evil crime to be committed against an individual. And as a society, we shouldn't stand for that in any form or fashion. And I hope anyone out there listening, someone out there might have seen something or, hear something. I think we owe it as a nation and as a society of freedom loving people, of people who believe in the rule of law, to say something in these incidents. And like I said, I pray for a safe return. I hope Andrea Barrett is returned safely, and I hope the perpetrators of this crime are brought to justice and dealt with in a swift and efficient manner. It's amazing what our country is coming to when you look at the type of crimes that's taking place, the type of crime that's becoming popular. But, there's a God out there and everything is going to settle along at some point in time. I know that justice is going to come. So, let's dive into it, guys. So, as I mentioned as I started off, the Duke of Tobago, Watson Duke. What an amazing election result. I myself never even expected a 6-6 tie in Tobago. I never thought that Watson Duke had that level of pull in Tobago in terms of that level of reach with the Tobagonian electorate. But it just goes to show how one can never predict the outcome of an election to 100%. I mean, where is the NACTA poll? NACTA poll predicted that the PNM was out front with 10 to 11. I mean, if it's one thing I've learned with polls, is that they are never to be trusted. And I stand firm in that belief since the election of Donald Trump. No one expected that the polls were going totally in favor of Hillary Clinton. When you look at this poll, it's no different. Everyone expected the PNM to pull off an amazing electoral victory. But the Duke of Tobago, well, like I said, a totally stunning electoral shake-up or earthquake that took place in Tobago, with Watson Duke pulling out 6 seats and the PNM pulling 6 seats as well. The PNM is the one who lost that election in my mind because they were holding, I believe, it was 10 or 11 seats, and to come now with 6 seats, it has to be seen as a loss of road, or a lot of the loss of inroad in terms of Tobago, and the population of Tobago not in favor of what's taking place with the THA, that is the Tobago House of Assembly. And now we have a situation where, because of the 6-6 tie, they can't elect a presiding officer and they can't appoint a new chief secretary. But what is of concern to me, given the outcome of the election, is that the current administration, the old assembly, in terms of the old executive council, that is, continues to remain in place. And I can't understand how that could even be right. Because in my mind, the PNM lost seats. They lost at least 4 seats in the election. Watson Duke is the one who gained electoral ground in Tobago. And if that is the case, that he gained electoral ground, how is it that the People's National Movement, that their executive council who's appointed right now, could even think it's right for them to continue to hold office? The electorate, via that election, basically stated that how they don't want the PNM in office anymore. They have taken away their support by giving them only 6 seats. They have lost electoral ground. So you can't now come and say that you want to remain in office. And I'm also not saying that because it's a 6-6 that Watson you should be automatically given the presiding officer in terms of the PNM should give him his vote. But what I'm saying, morally speaking, this country love to talk about morality and spirituality and all of those things. I think the PNM should recognize that they have lost this election. They have lost this election in terms of the number of seats they have lost. They have lost more seats. Watson Duke has gained seats. They should be more in favor to support Watson Duke presiding officer to facilitate the election of a general secretary or a Tobago chief secretary. But that's not how politics play in Trinidad and Tobago. Politics in Trinidad and Tobago is all depends upon the whole um, party party supporting basis. So that's not going to happen. But what is going to happen, and what I'm hearing people talking about, and I don't believe in this story, is that they want a new election. They want to go back to the polls. But to what end? Why, if I were to win 6 seats, having come out from only having 1 seat, why would I want to go back to the poll? That makes no sense to me. So what if I go back to the poll? It's 12-12 in terms of the electoral, the number of seats, and I go back to the poll and I come back at 6-6 again. What is the point of that? The only reasonable solution for this is to ensure that there's negotiations among both parties, that is, Watson Duke PDP, his political party, and the PNM, to come to an agreement for the election of a presiding officer to facilitate a chief secretary. It makes no sense going back to the polls given these circumstances prevailing right now. That is 12 seats. However, another topic they're talking about right now is having the Attorney General pass new law or amend the THA Act to facilitate 13 seats or to facilitate something that allows for the election of a presiding officer. That and all I don't support. How could you just depend all of a sudden decide how you want to have 13 seats? Doesn't that disenfranchise the current system in terms of the election that recently took place? And, and why, if I was Watson Duke, why would I even support that? If I was the opposition, why would I even support amending the THA Act just because you got a 6-6 tie? That's what the people wanted. They wanted to tell the PNM, they wanted to tell the powers that be that how we are tired of this. We are tired of how you're running the system. And that is why these results came back. You just can't come and decide because, hey, I don't like 6-6, it's a tie, it facilitates a deadlock. I go and pass a law in Parliament to change the system to facilitate 13 seats. Why is it only now you want to change it from to 13 seats, sorry, to move away from 12 seats? Only because you didn't get the electoral result that you wanted? That makes no sense. That is going against the will of the people in terms of the election that recently took place. I don't support that either. Like I said, negotiations, or unless someone decides, what, they're going to throw their weight behind one political party. And I honestly believe, given that Duke gained seats, that given the love for morality in this country and integrity and all those things, that give Watson Duke a chance. Let him run. Let him run the THA. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, but I don't support going back to the polls, and I definitely don't support changing the law just because you don't get the electoral results that you want. Everybody back in Trinidad and Tobago was, well, not everybody, but there's a good section, the loud voices, I like to talk about the loud voices, who don't represent the majority, but they like to be loud and think that they control the media houses and whatnot. So they like to pretend that they represent the interests of the majority. Everybody back then was talking about how Donald Trump should accept the results, move forward, allow Joe Biden. All right, that has happened. So what is the difference now? Why can't the PNM accept that it's a 6-6 tie? Why can't they allow that, come to some sort of agreement with the PDP, or the PDP come to some sort of agreement with the PNM to facilitate the election of a presiding officer? It's always double standards in Trinidad. There's always one rule for one section of people and the next rule for another section of people, dependent on your political affiliation. Second, but let's switch over to something else. What took place again last week with regards to this whole no confidence motion in the Minister of National Security. Now, like I said before in another episode, I didn't expect anything significant in terms of the outcome. Well, that is the final outcome in terms of the votes of the confidence motion in the Minister of National Security. But what was interesting and what we did find out from that whole debate was there clearly seems to be disagreement in the cabinet with regards to how this whole issue of treating with non-nationals being stuck abroad and being, you know, virtually stateless because, they don't belong to the states that they're in right now or to the countries that they're in right now. And Trinidad and Tobago is refusing to allow them in to come back into their own country of their birth. Now, I have spoken at length on my position with regards to not allowing nationals of Trinidad and Tobago to come back to their country of birth. That I've mentioned before is wrong. What I did find recently is that MP Rudal Munal bringing up WhatsApp pictures with Foster coming, disagreeing with the Minister of National Security. It's kind of refreshing to know that there are members in the cabinet who share our concerns with regards to nationals not being allowed to come back in. That not everyone in the cabinet is just, just single-minded thinking individuals that are just going along with just one particular road. So, like I said, it's good to know that there are people in the cabinet who share the majority of the Trinidad and Tobago population concern as it relates to allowing nationals back into our country, citizens back into our country. Now, why is that of concern to me? Because recently, I don't know how much you all would have seen this, but Anna Roberts, for example, has posted a video about Dominic Hardy and Blue Waters, how they were allowed. I guess the opposition leader was the first one to brought this to the public, whereby Dominic Hardy's Blue Waters was allowed to bring in 39 non-nationals, I think it was from Honduras, to repair some water, to repair the plum plant in his factory. Now, I have no problem with Dominic Hardy getting these people in. If he knows some contact and he get them in, fine. Once they follow the proper channels and they were tested, fine, that's okay. But how do you justify bringing in these non-nationals, even though it's from manufacturing or whatever? How do you justify bringing them in, but you don't allow your own citizens to come back to your country? That to me is irking. That to me shows some level of I don't know if is it discrimination. I mean, were these people tested? What is the rationale for not allowing your own citizens to come back in, but you could just and it's not like it's 5 or 6 and 39 people come in. I mean, isn't that amazing that you could allow 39 people? What and it goes the story gets even better. Dominic Hadid, Blue Waters CEO, he would then chastise the opposition for playing politics. You got 39 workers, non-national, to come to service some plant in your factory. But the opposition is playing games when they're asking for the nationals to come back into their country of birth. That doesn't make any sense to me. I have no problem with Blue Waters. I think Anna Roberts is calling for a boycott of them. I never used to drink Blue Waters in the first place. To me, it don't make much sense. I mean, if I'm drinking Blue Waters, which is just basically anyhow, we're not going on that road with Blue Waters, right? So I have no problem with them. But at the end of the day, I do believe that if they were allowed to get their 39 workers to come into the country, then we should have no problem with allowing our nationals to come back home immediately. Just as much as how we allow those foreign nationals to come in to Dominic Carney plan. And I think Dominic Carney, you should know very well, given this whole call for a boycott of Blue Waters and all that stuff, you should know very well that you are responsible for the employment of, I believe, a couple hundred, I'm not quite sure how many employees. For you to come out and chastise the opposition, you should know very well that you are putting not just your company online, but you're putting your employees online too. Because if the UNC membership would decide that they're not buying your product anymore, say for example, that's what 300 and some odd thousand people no longer buying your product because of what you said, you are putting the workers of your company in jeopardy because of you playing politics. You got your 39 non-nationals to come and service your factory or to service your plant in your factory. Stay quiet. Business people should know better than to put their companies at stake and their employees' bread and butter, their lives at risk because of they just wanting to play politics. I don't believe in cancel culture, but in the same breath, if it is that the opposition decides or the membership of the UN decides to boycott your product, then you are squarely responsible for that. I remember some time ago they wanted to boycott Ramsaran product. I was against that. They wanted to boycott Starlight drugs, I believe, somewhere in Maraval. I was against that. I mean, individuals have a responsibility to act in a certain way that ensure that they are not making statements that are stupid. And I think the individual should pay the price for that. But in terms of the entire business and putting the lives of the workers, the innocent workers who have no part to play in that, at risk, that is something. But at the end of the day, cancel culture, it's an individual decision. I would not go out here and say that, oh, you know what, boycott Blue Waters totally. That's not me. I'm fearful for the jobs of those people who might lose their jobs. And given the current economic situation that's taking place in Trinidad and Tobago, there are no jobs out there when you lost a job. There are no jobs out there when a company closed down, so you just jump back on the next job and just say, let's move on again. That doesn't happen. So I don't believe in that cancel culture. But back to the whole issue of keeping our non-nationals outside because of COVID-19 restrictions and all that. But the government has only bought, I believe it's 120,000 vaccines, of which the doses need to be taken twice. So basically you have 60,000 vaccines. 60,000 vaccines for a population, let's just say 1.2, 1.3 million people. When in God's name do we plan to get the rest of the vaccines to take care of Trinidad and Tobago population? Why only 120,000 vaccines, well, 60,000 vaccines? If Trinidad and Tobago doesn't get sufficient vaccine, according to the AmCham head, I agree with her, then we may very well face being isolated. But what's even more of concern to me is that the fact that we don't have the vaccine, this government is going to continue to play the lockdown game, the mask game, the social distancing, the lack of gathering game, because we don't have a vaccine and the risk of the virus is still out here. Get the goddamn vaccines en masse in Trinidad and Tobago. Whatever the government needs to do is only 1.3 million people. America is making 100 million vaccines by, I believe, by the end of March. And that's just one company. Why can't we source these vaccines for 1.3 million people to end this COVID-19 ridiculous lockdown in this small dot of an island called Trinidad and Tobago? There's no reason for us to continue this. You have 60,000 vaccines for 1.3 million people. That is ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense. Trinidad and Tobago should be one of the very first countries to come out of this lockdown situation because thankfully the vaccine is now there. But it seems as though we might be the very last. I mean, if we don't have this vaccine, how are we going to travel? Is it our intention to spend our lives in a bubble? It's ridiculous. We need to stop this. We need to move forward. We need to get this vaccine going so that individuals can move on with their lives. Enough on that. I want to focus now on the economy because, every time I talk about the economy, and this episode is no different because I've seen some signs that continuing to show that the economy is not rebounding no matter what the government is saying to you. So they would have you believe that the economy is doing good. The economy is rebounding, everything is hunky-dory, regardless of the foreign currency situation. But what's interesting is that the finance minister comes out in the public and said that our government cannot afford to pay high wage increases in the public sector. We can't afford to do that, but we can afford to buy 2 fast ferries. We can afford to buy patrol vessels, all of which we had before, but you can't afford to pay public servants what they're entitled and what they're due. You see, it's one thing to say that we can't afford something. Fine, we know we know the position of the government and the entire revenue situation has declined because of what's taking place with commodity prices and COVID-19. But you can't say with one breath, as I've mentioned before, that how it's impossible to afford certain items, salary increases, for example, but yet you're wasting money on your next side and then telling public servants they can't get a salary increase. I just don't understand it. How can you take a salary increase, that is the cabinet, take a salary increase, but then tell public servants that they can't? Now, some may argue that whatever salary increase the government takes is minimum in context of the entire public servant salary increase. Yes, that may very well be true, but it's the principle we're dealing with. If you want to set an example of how the government cannot afford salary increases, then you yourself must set the example by saying, you know what, I am not taking this salary increase even though I'm entitled as well. Because if you take the salary increase, then what do you expect the public servants are to say? they're going to come with the argument how you taking salary increase, but you're telling me I can't. And they will very well have a good argument for that. But that's not the only reason that shows that how the economy is not rebounding, given the finance minister statements. Excellent stores, for example, they have just closed two more branches, Trinity and Arima. No, they've closed Port of Spain before. Now, I've been thinking about it. Now, why would Excellent Stores close their Port of Spain branch and their Trinity branch, for example? Now, the argument that they're saying they're moving towards online products, right? Or they want to do more online shopping and that kind of thing. Fine. But Port of Spain and Trinity Mall branches were like your cash cows. The traffic that those stores generate, the amount of products that those stores sell, it's amazing. It's those stores generate the biggest amount of cash for you. I don't believe that the reason why what they're giving us in terms of why they're closing the stores because they want to focus more on online sales. I don't believe that's the real reason. I believe the real reason why they're closing down these stores for is because of the fact that if you have been to Excellent Stores, then you know the majority of their products are imported products. Everything that they get from away. Now, if all of the majority of your products, sorry, is foreign, then you need to keep your store stocked to ensure you have sales. But if you can't access foreign products because you can't access foreign currency, then what is the point in having your stores there if you can't stock your stores to facilitate sales? Now, that is why I believe that these stores are shutting down. And I suspect a lot more stores are going to shut down because if they can't access the relevant foreign currencies to keep the stores stocked, then whatever stock they have, whatever limited foreign currency that they have, they may very well be capable of managing that stock on online platforms. That is why I believe that our excellent stores and them want to close their stores. Another reason why I believe that the economy is not rebounding for is take for example we have spoken about the livestock feed here. It's official. It's official. Monday gone, which would have been yesterday, feed prices is gonna go up. Now, just think about the rippling effect that that's going to have in Trinidad and Tobago on the food sector. The food sector, if feed prices were to go up, can you imagine what's going to happen to poultry or those block shops on them? How much chicken price you do you remember? Well, I'm sure you do. But can you imagine what's going to happen to the price of a chicken now? And if the price of a chicken goes up because of the price of live feedstock goes up, then what's going to happen to all the other areas that utilizes those same chicken, KFC, Royal Castle? What's going to happen? The rippling effect is going to be, I don't know, it's going to be amazingly uncontrollable because it's 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 used all over. Not the feedstock that is, but the fact that the price increase for the feedstock is going to cause price increase throughout the entire food sector. I don't know what's going on, but those are just some of the signs that I'm seeing that how that is slowly but surely letting us know that all is not well in the economy. That things are not what they say they are. And we need to start taking stock of that because Venezuela didn't become Venezuelan one day. The prices in Guyana didn't just tumble one day. Inflation took its time. And then at some point in time, it just kicked off. And before you knew it, prices were uncontrollable. One prices increase, you all know this very well. One prices increase in Trinidad and Tobago, folks, very rarely don't come back down. There was a housing bubble in the US. The prices in Trinidad and Tobago ever dip. We need to pay very close attention on what's going on with these prices. This economy is, is on its knees. And if not for government control policies that are against the free market, and eventually the government is not going to be able to control for that much longer because their revenue is slowly but surely running dry. All is not well. And when that happens that they can't control it, it's going to be too late. Something needs to be done to stabilize this economy. Something needs to be done to get this economy moving. And nothing that I'm seeing out there is leading us to believe that the economy is going to be moving anytime soon. So, having said that, let me close on that note and wish everyone out there safe. Stay safe, folks. You see what's going on with these whole kidnappings. It's totally sad. It's so sad. So stay folks and tune in for episode number 30, Viewpoint, the Brian Heeraman podcast.